may be a former senator from Massachusetts, but Scott Brown has taken a step toward becoming the future senator from New Hampshire. Last week, Scott Brown announced he's formed an exploratory committee. And on Friday, he reminded the crowd at the Northeast Republican Leadership Conference in Nashua that his Granite State roots run deep.
Dad met Mom when she was a waitress at Hampton Beach. You've all been there. My dad was an airman at Pease Air Force Base. They were living on Islington Street in Portsmouth when I came along.
Brown is one of several Republicans who could challenge incumbent Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen. But will New Hampshire voters embrace Brown, and will his independent voting record win over the Granite State's GOP conservative base? James Pindle is the political director of New Hampshire television station WMUR. Welcome back to Greater Boston.
Thanks for having me again. It's been a while.
So the big question is, Scott Brown going to be able to convince New Hampshire voters that he's not a carpetbagger? I mean, he's, talking about his New Hampshire roots and all that. Hillary Clinton did it in New York. It's not unheard of.
Well, it's not going to be that much of an issue in the Republican primary because he's also facing another former Senator, Bob Smith, who just himself moved up from Florida. There's no doubt there's going to be a dynamic in the general election. But I got to tell you, I spent all day with him on his first day on the campaign trail on Saturday. It was just him and his wife, Gail, of course, in the truck. And I'm following them with my dog in the back. And he was, I got to say, I've been covering New Hampshire politics just for 12 years, but for a dozen years, he is the best New Hampshire candidate I have ever seen.
Really?
Now, this is not in terms of presidential politics. That's a different category.
Yes.
But the combination of his retail politics skills, and he's sort of a rock star up there. People want to get their picture taken with him. It seems exciting.
We know.
Right, exactly. Right. And so, but a lot of people in New Hampshire only saw him on TV from Massachusetts. And there's a sense, even among people in the Republican base, the timing of when he got in this race, they want to like him. They want to support him. They feel like they have to get over the hurdle. There's a couple of issues, particularly guns, maybe abortion, maybe immigration, that they have to get over. But they want to give him the benefit of the doubt because for the first time, New Hampshire Republicans look like they can take on Jeanne Shaheen. And why I say he's the best candidate we've seen in New Hampshire, if he gets to the primary, he's going to be taking on the most successful Democratic politician in probably 100 years.
Wow. All right, let's bring in Andy Smith. He's a political science professor at the University of New Hampshire. Welcome to you, Andy. Well, we were talking right before we started taping here that there was a lot of speculation that Scott Brown was holding off, moved to New Hampshire, but was really going to do a presidential bid. I mean, he's got a tough Senate race. I mean, this could hurt him politically if he doesn't make it through.
Right. You don't want to be a two-time loser. Losing in Massachusetts is an understandable thing as a Republican, but moving to a new state and losing there again, that would be pretty much the end of your political career. Whereas if you lose a race for a president, you can fall very nicely into another job after that. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be tough for him in this race, because New Hampshire is still largely a Democratic state, probably +3, +5 Democrat. But if you're ever going to run as a Republican in New Hampshire, this would be the year. Turnout's going to be high for Republicans. President Obama's approval rating is very low. So the same sort of dynamics we're seeing nationwide, we're seeing reflected in New Hampshire. And I think that, as James said, it's going to have not much difficulty in the Republican primary, largely because Bob Smith, who dropped out of the Republican Party, comes back into the Republican Party. Is not particularly popular. And you have two essentially unknown other candidates that are running who don't have much money. So he's got a really good chance. Republicans want to have a winner. If anything, they want a winner. And he's certainly the only person who can give a good run for Shaheen right now.
Of course, you all remember, I don't have to remind you, that one of Scott Brown's big stumbles came when he was debating Elizabeth Warren. Here we have a clip of it, but I mean, he wouldn't let go of that Native American thing, and it seemed to hurt him in the end. Here's a little bit of that.
There's only one person who wants to spend your hard-earned money, and that's Professor Warren. I'm sorry I didn't vote for your boss. I know that you and Justice Kagan are very close.
Excuse me, we're not interrupted. Go ahead.
Excuse me, I'm not a student in your classroom. Please let me respond, okay? Thank you.
He admonished her frequently. He kept bringing up this Native American data that she had put on one of her resumes, and it fell flat. I mean, he was very, very popular here in Massachusetts. I still remain surprised that he lost, but it was going head-to-head with a popular woman, which he will be doing
For the third time, Martha Coakley, Elizabeth Warren, now Jeanne Shaheen. This could go down as the most expensive race in New Hampshire history for a state office. And there is a lot of history going on here from a broader perspective. You know, Jeanne Shaheen, the incumbent Democratic senator he wants to take on, is the first woman to serve both as governor and a U.S. senator. And if Scott Brown's able to pull this off, become a senator from Massachusetts and then move to a different state, he'd be the first person to do that since the 1870s. So there's a lot of history going on in this race.
I mean, he does have legitimate New Hampshire roots. He's had that little house, and it's not a big fancy, it's not a Mitt Romney type house.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that only about a third of the adults in New Hampshire were born here. Pretty much everybody's come from someplace else. I think the difficulty that he has, that his move from Massachusetts to New Hampshire and his running in New Hampshire politics is so soon after he moved here. And it's Hillary Clinton and Bobby Kennedy both went to New York and ran and won Senate races there, but this is quite a bit different. New York is a solidly Democratic state, certainly is when Clinton ran. This is not a solidly Republican state by any means. It's not a safe seat for him. It's not like there's a big clamor for him as an international person.
And as Andy implied, the carpetbagger label obviously is going to be thrown there, but it's hard to find a state where it would matter less. Right? I mean, as Andy mentioned, well over a majority of folks are from somewhere else. New Hampshire has the second highest rate of commuters who live in one state who work in another state outside of Maryland. We are in the same media market. We root for the same sports teams. Culturally, it's the same thing. So that's going to be a problem because he just picked up and turned around so quickly to run. But it's not going to be as a problem as it would be in other states.
Now, I can't remember. Bob Smith, he was a congressman?
He was a congressman and two-term senator.
In this seat.
In this same seat.
Right, so he moved to Florida and then he came back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's legitimate. He can't really put a carpetbagger liberal.
Well, he moved back he officially moved back about 2 weeks before Scott Brown became a resident of New Hampshire.
and also
to run for Senate.
The problem that Smith has is, even though he was a two-term senator and he was in Congress for 2 terms, I think before that, 3 terms, he's largely unknown still. We got 55% of the people in the state say they don't know enough about him either to say he's to have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of him. So being out of politics for 12 years in a state like New Hampshire, which has such high migration rates, means that the voters who voted for him maybe in 2002 or 1996, half of them aren't there anymore.
Why does he want to do it anyway?
Well, at the time when he got in, he thought here was a chance to even have a shot at taking a seat. There were not that many well-known people running, and Scott Brown was not in the race. In fact, at the time, part of the important dynamic for both of them is that this was not supposed to happen. Scott Brown sort of created this himself 11 months ago when he floated this out, but this was never supposed to be serious. We're going to have Jeb Bradley, a former congressman, now a state Senate majority leader. He was supposed to run. A former congressman, Charlie Bass, was supposed to run. Johnny Sununu at the time, who hadn't gotten out of the race by the time Scott Brown said it. So by attrition, because Republicans kept saying no, we kept looking for someone else. Bob Smith thought he was the guy, couldn't make it happen. Now Scott Brown thinks he's going to try.
We're looking forward to it.
Well, at least we have a race.
We do.
Absolutely.
Okay, Andy Smith, James Pindle, thanks so much.
Thank you.